So good morning, friends. We are about ready to assemble a two-stroke Morris Models kit, and I want to show you how to do this. So we're going to obviously need our kit to put this together. We're going to need some glue. I personally like to use Elmer's Glue All. Don't use Elmer's school glue. That doesn't work well at all, but use Elmer's Glue All. We're going to need some sandpaper. Somewhere around 80 to 100 grit is best. And you're going to need some kind of a knife. I've got my little Swiss Army knife that I keep in my pocket. That will do just quite nicely for what we need. You can use all kinds of different knives to do what you need to do, but that's what I'm going to do. Of course, the first thing we need to do is open our kit. And when you do open the kit, you're going to find the parts inside. You're also going to find something pretty important, and that is our instructions. And we're going to be following along on these instructions to show you what they look like. Now, I'm going to just dump these parts out. And you can see all of the parts that we're going to need, and we're going to be putting these together. This is just a kit that I grabbed off the shelf. This is not special in any way, shape, or form because I'm showing this to you. This is just what we've got. So, the instructions start out with a whole bunch of information. You go ahead and read that. Obviously, it's important if it's written there, but we're going to get started and we're going to work on our step number one. And our step number one is to put together the piston and the rod. We're going to start with the piston. So we need to locate our parts. There's the back of the piston, the middle of the piston, and the front of the piston. Those three parts are going to go together. Then we need to put together the piston rod. There's the middle of the piston rod. There's an extra one of those in there, hopefully. Then we've got the front of the piston rod, and there's the back of the piston rod. So that's the parts that we're going to need. We're also going to go ahead and throw in the wrist pin. And I'm going to push all these other parts off to the side. We'll be getting them back from time to time as we need them. But I'm going to kind of try and clear a little space here. We'll move this across and zoom in just a little bit so that people can see things better. There we are. It's time for us to play piston. And we start by taking the rear piston and setting it out. Now, you'll notice that there are two sides to everything. And on this one, it doesn't really make much difference what it is. But some of them have a slightly better side and a slightly worse side. And if it does have a better or a worse side, we want to put that side appropriately where it needs to go. Now, the next thing it shows us is we are going to put the middle layer, and I want the slant facing off to the right. Here's the slant part, and I'm going to spread glue. Now, let me talk to you a little bit about glue. The most common mistake people make with glue is they put too much glue on there. We want a very light bead of glue. All right, very light bead of glue. That's probably too much, but we'll get by with it right here. There's a very light amount of glue across there. Just about as light of an amount of glue as I can get. Now, I'm going to take this and I'm going to turn it over and glue it down on top of my piston. I got to line everything up manually and make it just as perfect as possible on my alignment. And I want you to notice when I do that I've got just a tiny amount of glue that's squeezed out right along here and a tiny amount of glue that's squeezed out right along there. Watch out where the glue squeezes out because that can cause problems. I'm just going to clean that squeeze out up with my finger on the areas that I can, and I've got my first pieces glued together. The next thing I need to do is glue this on top, but I can't really tell where to do the gluing on there, so I'm going to put the glue on this layer, just kind of like I did on the first time. We're just going to move along, put that glue on the first layer. There's our light amount of glue on the first layer, and we're going to go ahead and set it down on top. And there it is. I've got everything glued. I want everything lined up as perfectly as I can get it lined up. There is my first part of my engine done. I have the piston done. Now we need to do the connecting rod, and it goes a whole lot like the piston goes. Right across here, again, I don't see any good or bad sides on any of these, so I'm fine using whatever they are. But you'll notice that what I've done on this, on the instructions, I've shown arranging them about like so, right on there, and just follow right along with the instructions. Here you can see there's the 3 pieces. I've arranged them just like you see the 3 pieces, and that allows me to say, hey, I know what I've got to do. Now, I'm going to take the smokiest side, and I am going to put a thin layer of glue, and that's way too much glue. This glue bottle is really flowing, so I'm going to get rid of some of that glue. I can just take a little off with my finger. If you get too much glue on things, it comes squeezing out in all kinds of different places where we don't want it, and it just makes a mess. Things don't run the way they're supposed to. So here we are, trying to get a lighter amount of glue. That's about the appropriate amount of glue. I'll go ahead and put that on there. And I don't know how well you can see that, but we'll try and position it in different ways. That's about the right amount of glue. Not a lot of glue. And again, when we put it on things, we want to check and see how it's doing in terms of the squeeze out. There is our first layer and our other layer, and this together is going to make up our connecting rod. We need to make sure everything is lined up on the connecting rod, particularly the holes on the inside. And I'm going to cheat, and I'm just going to use that to help me. Now, this does not do the job for me, but it helps me. And I can see, oh, I'm not really there yet. And while the glue is nice and wet, I want to arrange everything, get it all set out, and press it all together, clean up any glue squeeze out with my finger. It's one of the reasons I like to use Elmer's glue, is it's good for that kind of thing. And that piston rod is going to fit inside the piston. We're going to put the little wrist pin in there, but I'm not ready to do that yet because I need to wait until the glue dries. So we're going to set that aside to dry, and when we come back, we're going to put all that together. Now, I'm going to cheat a little bit because I'm in a hurry to get this done. I am going to move on to step number 2, and then I'm going to come back and finish up step number 1. All right, our last thing that we need to do is we need to put this together. And I want to show you this process of putting this together. I do want to clean the fuzzies off of this connecting, off of this wrist pin. There we go. I'm going to clean the fuzzies off of this wrist pin. And now I'm ready to pin this together. This piston is going to go in here, the connecting rod is going to go in here, and it's going to spin back and forth like this. I don't want it to come loose, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop that wrist pin in from the back. It's going to take me a little bit to get everything lined up. There it is. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a couple of little drops of glue on the back, because I don't want that coming out. But I also need to make sure that it can pivot. So there's my glue. I've kind of worked it down into there as best I can and then scraped off any extra glue. And I'm going to let that dry. And that is what I need for my piston. And this thing needs to be able to slide back and forth like this, because the piston's going to move up and down and the wrist pin's going to go from side to side. That finishes up my piston. Step number 2, the crankshaft. Let's go ahead and get our landscape view again so everybody can see what we're doing. And on the crankshaft, we are going to need 3 crank webs and 1 crank counterweight. There's a crank web, another crank web, another crank web, and this one does show a little smoke damage on it. We are going to need the nose shaft, we are going to need the rear shaft, and we are going to need the throw. And all of those together are going to be what we put together along with our piston that we just built into our crankshaft. Now, again, let's zoom in a bit. I think that will do. And we can start this construction process. Now, the first thing it tells us is we need to do the rear of the crank, but I did not tell you that you need to make sure to sand everything. I think it said that in the initial instructions. But this needs to fit smoothly, which it does. That's not a problem. This fits smoothly. this fits smoothly, and I want to sand all of the fuzzies off of these, and I just want to make them look nice. So I'm going to get my sandpaper, and I'm going to just sand the bevel edge to get rid of those little fuzzy edges that the tools make. And once I'm done sanding those fuzzy edges that the tool makes, the next thing I'm going to do is sand the edge. And I'm just going to, you'll notice I'm spinning this as I sand it across here. I'm just spinning it a little bit so that we get a nice sanded edge. Don't sand any one spot, just sand it into a nice little cylinder. And everything should be good. There we are. Once that's done, we're going to do the same thing on this outside edge, and I just want to make it look nice. The more I sand it, the better it's going to look. I actually personally like to use my power sander while I'm doing this, but I'm not assuming everybody who puts one of these together has a power sander. If you've got one, you know, of course use it, but just be careful, because you can get your fingers on it, and you can move a lot of material really fast. So I'm much happier with what this looks like already. Doesn't take a lot of sanding to make it look a lot nicer. Got rid of that most of that hard edge, and I could spend a little more time on that, but this is the goal of this, is to show you how to put it together, not how to make it look pretty. So that one we're going to call done, and we still have this last one to do. I know this is so much fun. There we are. All of our fuzzies are gone. Everything is good. I'm going to take the sandpaper out of the way, and I'm going to see what I can do here. All right, now there is one thing I am going to do that I don't believe is mentioned in the plans. It'll make it come out just a little bit better if I take a couple of these crank webs and I sand a little off. So I want to show you this crank web right here. You see how this side's got a little smoke on it? I'm going to go ahead and sand that off. I mean, if I'm going to sand one side or the other, I might as well sand the side that's got smoke on it. So I'm going to put it on my sandpaper, and I'm just going to make it a little thinner. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. And that seems to be about enough. That just makes it so it fits a little better in the crankcase. We're going to do the same thing to this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 30 strokes on that one as well. And we're going to set that aside, and we're going to begin the construction process of our crankshaft. So we're going to begin our crankshaft construction by laying out one of these crank pins. This is not going to be part of the thing itself. It's just going to be something that helps hold everything aligned while I build it. Actually, I'm going to use this instead, because you can tell that's not part of the crankshaft. I'm going to set that right there. And now I'm ready to begin my process. I need that rear shaft to fit right across here, and then I need the throw to sit right across here. And that's how they're going to sit in the final engine. Now I need to glue everything together. And the way I'm going to glue everything together, I want this piece to come down and lock everything together. I'm going to put glue in between where those are going to go. And I'm going to form 2 rings of glue. Now, you've noticed before I was really careful not to put very much glue on. Here I'm going to put quite a bit more glue on. I still don't want to put too much glue in, but I'm going to put at least double the amount of glue. And you'll see it goes all the way around each side. Now when I put this piece over the top, that glue is going to squeeze out, and it is going to lock everything together. It's going to lock the shafts in place. It's going to lock everything into position. And we are going to need to let this sit until it is done. Now check and make sure that this is low enough. I may actually need to space this upwards just a mite to make sure everything fits okay. That needs to dry pretty well before I can continue. So there's our crankshaft, and by now we got some glue going together, and this is getting fairly solid. It's been maybe 20 minutes, somewhere in that range, and I've still got some wet glue on the side, but it's holding together well enough that it's solid enough I can start putting it together. Now, I might, and when I look at this, I can see that there's some thin areas that didn't really get enough glue into them. So I'm going to try and put a little more glue into those thin areas. I like as much glue as I can get on here. But I got to be careful because that extra glue is going to try and stick extra things together. So I'm going to get my knife out and I'm going to push that glue down into the joint. And before I fit this rotating assembly, I'm going to need to come back and I'm going to need to cut off any extra glue, because this extra glue can sure mess things up. It's great to have enough glue. It is a problem to have too much glue. And I'm ready to attach my piston to my crankshaft. And that's what we need to do. As you can see, we just popped this across the top. No glue in this area. We got to keep everything nice and neat. And I'm going to add a couple layers across here just to hold everything up and in position. And that will balance it right there. No glue, so this is free to pivot. That's good. I want that to be free to pivot. The next thing I've got to do is I've got to add my nose shaft. So I'm going to set one of those across here, one of the crank throws, same as I've done before. I'm looking for right at the center here because I want you to be able to see this. How are we doing? Did we lock up? There we go. All right, so I'm going to set this in the center, and I want you to see that this needs to line up exactly straight. So when I find exactly straight, that looks pretty good right there, that's where I'm going to glue this in position. Now, just like before, we're going to put our next shaft up on top, like that, and then we're going to put our little figure 8 of glue all the way around the edge. And I may get in the way of this shot while I add my figure 8 of glue. We'll just see how good I can get this done. Hard to get it done, but we'll get in there and we'll get all of that glue in place. Now, before I close everything up, let's realign and make sure that everything is lined up perfectly. I'm going to get right up on top of this camera, so my voice probably sounds a bit different right now. But there we are. And I'm also going to drag some of this glue. There's a lot in that pool. I'm going to just drag it across to here. Now, there shouldn't be any glue going down inside of this yet. And we're going to take care of that when we put the next piece across the top. That piece is going to go right across the top. It's going to push everything into position. And we should be good. This should still be able to pivot. Everything is lined up. I've lined everything up correctly, and we're going to let that set and dry while we wait for anything else to happen. And in step number 3, I need my case back layer. I need my cylinder wall rear layer, and I need my inlet walls layer. And those layers are going to go together, and they're going to form the back of my case. Now, this is where I get to introduce you to the idea of alignment pins. And these alignment pins are going to help me line everything up. They're not going to do it for me. So I'm going to take this piece of 1/8" dowel rod right across here, and I'm going to cut me a few pins. And I'm just going to grab my knife, and I am going to make a circular cut, several of them. Just pushing down pretty heavy. Don't do this on a nice table. Make sure you got something to protect everything. And now all I've got to do is break these off, and I've got these alignment pins. And these alignment pins are going to help me line everything up. So you'll notice that at the beginning it says what we need to do is set this layer out, and we need to spread a light bead of glue on it. And we've talked about that light bead of glue before. This is definitely where we don't want too much glue. So here's our light bead of glue, real nice and light. Try and kind of stay away from those little holes because we don't want to glue the pins into the holes. And there it is. All right, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to pop this little cover over the top. And those holes are going to line up on this cover. Oh, you see that right there? Little spot right there. Let's go ahead and clean that up before we put it together. Use my knife, and I could use my sandpaper as well, but I think that's good enough. Right like that. All right, so this piece is going to go here. My alignment pin is going to go through, and I'm going to pop it down into the hole below. And I'm going to do the same thing with, how about we just do it with that hole and that hole. There we are. That just helps me line everything up. I still need to manually line everything up as best as I can. I just want everything nice and aligned, and I push everything down. I can kind of tip it off with these pins and use that to help me line everything up. And once it's pushed into place, those pins just pop out, and they stay there temporarily. I can take this fella, and I can set it up like that, and I can add the next layer. So for the next layer, all we're going to do is come back over here. Once again, our light layer of glue. I got a little too much over there, but it's not gonna hurt anything where it is. Here's my light layer of glue. And we are ready to put this piece in place. Now, we have to be careful that this piece goes in the correct direction. This little ear needs to line up across the top of that space. And we have 3 places where we can use these pins. And I'm going to put that first pin there. I'm going to put that second pin right across there. And that's probably enough, but I can go ahead and put the third pin in as well. And I'm going to manually line everything up, press down nice and firm. And once everything is good, I'm going to pop those pins out because I don't want them to become a permanent part of the structure. I just want them to be there to help me line things up. That's what they're there for. That's why I call them alignment pins. I'm going to wipe off any excess glue, and we are ready to move on. The back of the case is done. Now, it doesn't take very long to build the case, and I'm going to go ahead and move on to finishing up the case, step 4. And we're going to set that everything aside. Now for step 4, I need 2 of these port dividers. And these port dividers, you can see I have a full-size spot to show me exactly where those port dividers go. And there's my 2 port dividers, and then I'm going to need my 3 cylinder layers. And I've got the one with the spark plug, okay, the mid layer. I've got the one with a solid spot here. You can see that solid layer, it goes there, and then the last layer is going to sit right across here. And you can see it's nice and free and wiggly. And those layers are all going to line up on top of my current layer. I'll set these aside, and I'm going to come back and I'm going to grab my, there we are. I'm going to come back and I'm going to grab this. I'm going to pull back a little bit because this is getting a little bigger than I want to show. And we are going to be able to work. We are going to start by taking this layer, and this layer is going to fit right like this. Notice that this goes on the opposite side of the engine as the one that's underneath it. Let me grab my toothpick so I can show that, or my little pointer here. This is the air inlet, this is the exhaust, and the exhaust port's on the opposite side. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to spread glue on the back of this. I'm going to open it up, and there's where I'm going to spread my glue. And my glue goes everywhere on this except for on the exhaust port itself. So all I've got to do then is my nice thin little bit of glue. And remember, too much glue is more of a problem than too little glue in most cases. So we don't want to put too much glue on it. There we are. We've made our glue go around, and now a little bit of glue over here, and we want a little glue on each of those fins. And this is the most time-consuming part of it, is getting just a little glue on each of those fins. And we want that to spread out. It won't take us too long, though. As you can see, we're more than halfway done. And we could put just a little across there, a little bit there. And now we've got our glue ready to go. And we are going to turn this back over and we're going to put it in place. And I'm going to use those alignment pins because that's what they're there for. They're there to make my job easy. So there's 1, 2, 3 alignment pins. I'm just going to set everything down, find that spot. Come on, you. It doesn't want to do it for me. There we are. And I've got this next layer put in place. Clean up a little glue squeeze out, make sure everything lines up. This first layer is not bad. After this, it gets more and more critical how well we get everything lined up. So we're going to get that first layer done. And now we're ready for our second layer. And our second layer is going to sit right across the top of all of this. It's got that spark plug built into it and a couple of other things. I'm going to put a couple of spacers on the back of my cylinder so I can push down harder on it. There we are. That just makes life a little bit easier. Now once again on this layer, it's going to go here, but we're going to put our glue on the back of it. So we want to open it up like that. And once we've opened it up like that, we are ready to spread our glue. We can spread glue everywhere on this layer except for the spark plug because the spark plug doesn't have anything that it goes across the top of. So we're going to start right here at the top. And my glue's flowing a little better this time. Put just a thin bead of glue all the way around except for on the spark plug. We got to get all those fins, but as you see, those fins don't take us very long, not after we've done this a few times. Good test of hand-eye coordination, though. There we are. And we've got that set in place. Once again, we are going to use those pins because those pins make our life much, much easier. There's the first one, and here's the next one, and here's the next one. And I'm going to go ahead and throw another one in there because this is kind of wiggly. Now, the key on this is making sure that there's no glue squeeze out on the sides of my cylinders and that my cylinder is the right width, that the sides match up nice and neat. And I'm pretty happy with what this one looks like right now. I'll push it down. And by the way, if you put too much glue on it, it just kind of skates around when you push it down. But I haven't put too much glue on it. And so you'll notice it sticks together pretty good. I can actually pick this up by the spark plug right now. I'm not ready to really glue it together, to really test it on that yet, but it does a pretty good job of holding really quickly if we do it correctly. There is our part, but we need one more thing. We're going to go ahead and we are going to add our little cylinder wall. And this little cylinder divider, I guess it's what I called it, a port divider. We need to add that port divider, and to add that port divider, we're just going to put a little bit of glue. Again, don't overdo the glue. Don't overdo the glue. That's the most common mistake people make, is they put in too much glue. And we want just enough to be sticky. Put that in, use our alignment pin. I've got another alignment pin right here. That's going to help line it up, but once again, I'm going to manually line it up with the side of the wall to make a nice straight wall right across here. And there's our next layer. Being done with that next layer, we're moving right along. We are ready for our last layer. And our last layer is going to sit right like this. So, you guessed it, we're going to open it up like a book and put our glue on the back of that last layer. You'll notice there's quite a lot of smoke on the back of this one, but that's okay. It's going to get hidden in this joint and nobody's ever going to know. All right, so there is our light bead of glue right across the edge. I suppose we could skip the bit about putting all the glue on the fins, but it's going to hold together a lot better if we put the glue on the fins. Just going to make it a lot solider. There we go. Getting our glue on all the fins. This is so exciting. Just wait till you try a 9-cylinder radial. But there's all of our glue. Yeah, I want just a tiny bit more right there. There we go. And we can go ahead and do the exact same thing we've done several times already. Alignment pin in the bottom. I know where that's going to go. I can get this pretty close. We'll pop an alignment pin right there. That one didn't want to go in. Wow. All right, I'm going to go ahead and just pop it right there then. That's okay. I can work with it. And make sure that that edge is straight. I'm feeling it with my fingers while I'm setting the glue, pushing everything down, making sure there's no glue squeeze out that's going to cause that piston to stick when it tries to slide back and forth inside that cylinder liner. And there is our piece. Now, of course, we know what comes next. We've got to put that little cylinder port divider in there, but that's okay. The port divider goes in quick and easy. Tiny little bit of glue on our port divider, 2 alignment pins for our port divider, 1, 2, and we are mostly done with the body of this engine. All right, our next step is to fit the rotating assembly into the case that we have just built. So here's our case, and I'm not going to bother to put wax on mine. Some people do like putting wax on theirs. That's entirely up to you. I'm just going to go ahead and fit things. Before I can fit this, we want to check and make sure everything is good on our rotating assembly. So our rotating assembly should, of course, rotate. And here's our crankshaft, and our piston should move back and forth on our crankshaft. Our connecting rod should move, our piston should move, everything should look good. And I want to show you a little area we need to check. If you look right here, you can see just a little bit of a ridge on the side of this dowel rod. And it would be better if that was even and flush and flat. So I'm going to grab something and I'm going to do a little sanding. So I'm going to grab a little piece of 2x4 or something with a nice sharp edge. We're going to raise that up so you can see what's happening. And we are going to grab our sandpaper, set that right across there, and I'm going to sand the top of that dowel rod. We're just going to go back and forth on that a few times. Almost there. And just an itty bitty bit more. I think that's going to be good. Okay. So here we've got our rod, our connecting rod set. Everything is moving around when we move our piston, and that means that we should be good to go. Now, before we do anything else, I'm going to set this down inside my crankcase, and I want to make sure that everything can fit and that that piston can move up and down without any great difficulty. I'm getting just a little bit of resistance on the piston, but nothing too bad. Let's sand just a tiny bit on the edge of the piston. It's not going to hurt us a bit. So, I'm not going to do much, just a little bit. And that should help hold everything in, make everything get perfectly in line. And there we are, and we can actually see all of the motion of the engine right there. Everything's good, but I am going to go ahead and put things together. I fit that into place, and now I am ready to finish up the model. And finishing up the model says I'm going to need 2 of these across the top here. 1, 2. They're going to set across the top, and then we are going to put this piece in. And this piece is going to set right across here. Now, I'm not really happy with how well those are fitting. They're a little bit tall on that spot, and to keep them from pinching everything together, I may need to do a little bit of sanding, or I may need to do something else. There is something else I'm noticing, though. I'm noticing that one of these little pieces didn't come out with the laser, so I'm just going to punch that out and make everything look a little better. I'm going to definitely want to put that up in that position, and I need just a tiny bit more space in this spot. Now, there should be an extra one of these, and I could always go ahead and grab an extra one of these and sand each one of them just a little bit flatter, and that would make everything work. That might be the easiest thing that I can do on this particular engine to make everything fit nice and free and even that may be the best plan for this particular engine, is just to add that extra piece in there. That's why it's there, in case you need it for that. It'd be better if I could sand about half of the width off of it, and that would be ideal. I could make it fit without putting anything else into there, but this is probably our best bet. So let's see what we can do. Let's go ahead and glue these things together. Okay, it tells us we are going to glue 2 of these into place. Glue them down. There's not anything particularly complicated to show how we're going to do the gluing, but I'm going to do as the plans suggested, and I'm going to put my little bit of glue. See if I can get that glue flowing a little better. There we are. There's my little bit of glue, a little bit right there. We're going to bring that first piece on down. It really doesn't matter which side we put upward on these, because they're going to all look the same when we're done. They're going to all face the same direction. There's one. We're going to go ahead and put the second one in. Glue is on the bottom. It's glued into place. Now, as you can see, I've got this little problem that we were talking about. It's got just a little bit too much of a ridge, and if I were to try and put this on right now, that would probably cause me some trouble. So I'm actually going to elect to do this a slightly different way. I'm going to glue these pins into place. No, we don't want to do that. I'm not really sure what I'm going to do on here. Yeah, let's go ahead and glue this third one into position. So hopefully you weren't like me and you would have got yours to come out just a little bit better, but I'm going to glue that third one into place right across the top. There's my nice thin layer of glue. There's my piece coming into position. Clean the edge up just a little bit. And I need to decide how I'm going to handle this. I know exactly what I'm going to do on this one. I am going to create a nice little thin spot that's going to take care of things for me. And I'm going to do that by using this little area. We're going to do a little sanding. This ring, I'm going to set this ring on the back side of this, and that's going to help me space everything out just the way I want it. So we're going to set this. Again, this is all stuff that's not in the plans. You know, we don't, we assume that you do everything right on the plans. It'll be a lot more detailed on the video. There is my ring, and I am going to sand that sucker down to give me lots and lots of room. Let me grab something to help me hold it while I sand it. I'm going to turn that over, and I'm going to sand that piece. All right, here's my last little bit. I've got that little ring set up, and that little ring is going to give me just enough of a cushion to kind of hold all of that. If I press down on this firmly, I can still easily spin my crankshaft, but it's nice and firm, so everything is good. And we are going to put our little bit of glue and just put it right around the edge. Again, light glue, light glue, light glue. We don't want too much glue. I got too much right there, so I'm going to wipe it off. And we're going to glue this last little bit on, and that is going to finish up our model engine. We can pop that loose, pop that loose, pop that loose, and our engine is complete. There we are. Morris Models logo. Everything looks good. And looks like it took me about an hour and 30 minutes, even pausing for glue drying, to get this one done. And it'll do the job quite nicely. All right, I hope you were able to get yours to come out as well as mine was able to come out. And thank you very much for paying attention. Hope to see you back again sometime. Thanks. Bye.